Kia ora, everyone. Welcome back to Stripped and Unscripted. I'm Vixen Temple.
And I am Madeline Rose.
Happy Pakeha New Year to all those who celebrate. I hope that everyone's having a good summer or winter break, whatever part of the world you're in. We are really excited to be back with Stripped and Unscripted. We're going to record a really, hopefully, interesting corridor today. As you can see by the title, it's called Spicy Brain, Spicy Work, Neurodiversity, and Sex Work. So Madeline and I have touched on in previous episodes about our neurodiversity and how it plays into sex work and just our lives in general and our activism. So we thought it would be cool to dedicate an entire episode to this topic. So first I'm going to pass over to Madeline. And Madeline, when did you start to suspect that you were potentially a bit spicy in the brain, and how was that process for you?
Well, my parents thought so first. They had me tested for a bunch of stuff when I was I think I was 7 or 8. And I got diagnosed with all of the slightly less medicated supporting learning difficulties that kind of come before ADHD. And I remember my mum said this to me when I don't know how old I was probably a teenager, but my mum said to me that I had said something about ADHD, and she had said that the woman who tested me had said that that wasn't something that we needed to worry about because I was a girl, which is classic, very classic. That whole, it's not a trope, what's the right word? It's women just so underdiagnosed in neurodiversity. And so obviously back then, would have been 2006, when I was that age, that girls having ADHD was just unfathomable to people, which is so, I definitely had to grieve that as an adult, because I think if I had properly found out and been medicated earlier, that things would have been very different. Not that I would want them to be super different, but I would have felt like I knew myself a bit better. But I think I probably started to figure out that something was quite different toward the middle to the end of high school, year 11, 12, 13 probably. My friend group at school were all very intellectual, very good at book smarts, all just on paper, just getting great grades. And I remember fitting in really well with them and being able to keep up with them really well in our not social interactions, but we were friends. I wasn't out of my depth with them in any way, but the way that I was doing at school was so different, and I felt a lot of shame around it. And so I think I started to suspect something around then, but it wasn't until my 20s that my friends and just people around me started to bring it up to me and be like, hey, have you thought that maybe you might be a little spicy? I think because I thought I was really depressed. I was oh, I've got depression. I'm so depressed. I'm so anxious all the time. Oh my God. I can't keep up, blah, blah, blah. My friends were like, hey, maybe you should look into ADHD and autism. And this was also the time that there was a lot more, I guess this is very much when social media had become a real thing, but there was a lot more chat online about what autism and ADHD looked like, especially in women. So yeah, I think it was kind of that, everyone being like, yo, you need to think about that one. Yeah. But what about you, Vixen?
Kia ora. I have quite a similar story. I too was a child of the 2000s, and I cannot emphasize enough to the younger generation of Gen Z listening how much, as Madeline said, in the 2000s, ADHD was something boys had, and it was a really negative thing to be autistic or ADHD. And I remember when I was being diagnosed, talking to the person, and I said to them, for as long as I can remember, I feel like in life, when you're born, everyone was given an instruction manual on life, and mine is missing a few pages. And I'll tell the people around me hey, I don't have page 5. You guys are referring to page 5. I don't have page 5. And people will look at me and be like, oh, yes, you do. Just don't be silly. Just do what everyone else is doing. But I don't know how to do what everyone else is doing because I don't have the page that they're reading. And it was a really confusing experience for me growing up. I always knew there was something, a need for a better word, different about me, off about me. I was picked on a lot growing up. There's always that joke that it's like, shout out to my high school bullies who figured out my neurodiversity before the adults in my life did. But I was picked on a lot. I was just a weird child. But I started to figure out that it was like ADHD and put a word to it. Yeah, in my 20s as well, especially during the lockdown. So during the 2020 lockdown in Aotearoa, started seeing a lot of TikToks, like Madeline said, about how ADHD manifests in women. I saw one of those videos that was like, hold your fingers up and put a finger down challenge. And then by the end, it was like, all right, if you have 6 or more fingers down, you might have ADHD. And I was like, oh shit, okay. Things started falling into place. Things started making sense for me. It wasn't until the 2021 extended Tamaki Makaurau lockdown. Trigger warning, I'm going to mention suicide. But during that lockdown, I had this gorgeous flatmate who I was really close with, who was also on the spectrum, saying to me, you give spicy brain. You should look into that. What made me realize that it was something that was really impacting my life and that I should take seriously was, during that lockdown, when my day-to-day routine got taken away from me, I went a bit crazy and I had a mental breakdown. And one day it all just like, oh my God, I remember that day so clearly. I woke up and I just felt like, I don't know if anyone's seen the film The Labyrinth, that scene when Sarah is like falling down the like tunnel of hands and she's trying to like grab onto the hands and none of them are grabbing her. They're like poking and groping her. I felt like that. I felt like I was falling. I was drowning. There was just noise everywhere and I just couldn't handle it. And I went fucking crazy. I started running up and down the street, like screaming like a banshee. I went nuts. I tried to throw myself in front of a bus, and I want to emphasize, sorry, I'm laughing, dark humor. It wasn't that I wanted to die. I just remember in that moment feeling so overwhelmed. It was like every moment in my life of feeling misunderstood, of feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and shame was just flooding me. And there was just like screaming in my ears that I just wanted to silence. And I remember thinking, if I throw myself in front of a bus, it'll all be over. I'm going to Regina George myself. Luckily, someone stopped me. But that experience really made me realize, like, I'm so hypersensitive to noise, to my emotions. I feel things in ways that I don't even think there's, like, I feel emotions I don't even think that there's, like, words for in the English language. I experience things in ways that don't seem to impact other people as much. And prior to the lockdown, I had been stood down. I was dancing at a club in Tamaki Makaurau. I'd been stood down for, I can't even remember what I was stood down for. I think they found out that I was like trying to unionize the workers or something. I can't remember. I got stood down for like a week or 2 weeks and then the lockdown hit. And I think during that time, I remember like struggling with my sense of justice and struggling with that in the strip club and the way that management was treating us and me trying to stick up for myself and the other workers and being like, this is wrong, and being met with like, I remember the manager at the time saying to me like, all the other girls don't have a problem with it. It's only you that seems to have an issue with it. Like, what is your problem? Not true. The other dancers did have a problem with it. But yeah, it was just this sense of like, I can't just go about things if they don't make logical sense to me. And those that work in the strip club know that a lot of the things that managers do are not logical at all. They make no fucking sense, at least by my idea of logic and morals and values. And that was just something I really struggled with in a way that I feel like not everyone around me did. Like, people were sort of able to just go about their lives and push through it. But I like physically couldn't. It like caused me physical harm. So during that lockdown, after that Menti B, did some research, hustled hard on Fansly, booked a consultation, got my diagnosis a couple of months later, and suddenly I had a name, a terminology. I knew exactly what type I had, the combined type. I'm inattentive and attentive. How does that work? It doesn't. So yeah, that was my story. It was a mess, but I feel, when I got diagnosed, there was absolutely some grief that came with it. I had to like hold my inner child through those moments that I knew that I just felt like I was weird and different and lazy and slow and stupid and whatever it was that I thought about myself. But there was also this profound sense of empowerment that I think a lot of fellow like disabled humans understand, that like a diagnosis comes with grief, but it also comes with a sense of fucking profound relief that you're like, oh my gosh, I have a word for it now. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and now I can learn how to manage it. So over the years, I've read a lot of really great books. I've done some research. I've had to, it's been like 5 years since I was diagnosed, and I've really learned to adjust my life and build a life that suits my needs instead of trying to assimilate myself to the world that was not built for my brain. So that's my story.
Yes. Can we also just quickly say how fucking crazy expensive it is to even be assessed for ADHD or autism or anything like that? Like, just you saying that you booked an assessment and that you hustled hard on Fansly to get it. Just want to make it super known to everyone that listens to this. To book an appointment for an ADHD or an autism or something in that sort of spectrum assessment, especially if you're looking to pursue stimulant medication in New Zealand, can cost you anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 or $4,000, and it can often take 2 years to actually get the appointment. The idea of, I don't know if it took that long for you, Vixen, but I know someone right now who is trying to get diagnosed and has been trying to get diagnosed for, and this person more than has the money. Like, this person is not struggling financially in any way, but is on a waiting list and will be getting their first assessment for it this October. And it's been over a year since they've applied for it. Just want to say how fucked that is just on its own.
Kia ora. Like, I think just to get the consultation was $600. I feel very fortunate with how quickly I was diagnosed. So I think it was September of 2021. Sorry, I was wrong. It was 2022 I got diagnosed. It was September of 2021 that I made the appointment with my GP, said, listen, this is like impacting my life to a point that I just tried to like unalive myself. I need help. I want to get medicated. They gave me a bunch of numbers to call. I think like I called 5 different places before I found one that could fit me in for an appointment. But yeah, ngā mihi to what Madeline said. It was fucking expensive. It took I think it was about like a 5-6 month process. And that's why I think like I am very of the opinion that self-diagnosing is so fucking valid. I really hate the rhetoric on the internet. It's like, oh my God, suddenly everyone's fucking autistic these days. Everyone's self-diagnosing. Like, self-diagnosing is, I just think they're so ableist to be so angry about people self-diagnosing, because not everyone has the means to get diagnosed. Also,
100%.
yeah, and in saying that,
So frustrating.
Not all GPs validate your story, or they'll like gaslight you. So no, ngā mihi to what Madeline said. Fucking agree. It's expensive. It's a long process. I was very fortunate in mine, and I'm glad I did it when I did. I think if I'd gone about it now, it would be way harder. I feel like I got it in just such a good point in my life, and it just all fell into place for me. I'm fucking fortunate for that. So it's kind of one of the only reasons I'm still alive, I think. So yeah, ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi, yeah. What else have we got on here? We said we were going to talk about how it manifests for us.
Yeah, what is it? What is your, like, when you say to people that you think that you don't think, you are ADHD and autistic, what does that mean for you? How does it manifest in you, my dear?
Well, I've got a little list. That I've written because otherwise I'll forget, which is classic. So I have ADHD, which is autism, and ADHD, which is just, double banger. And like, there's so many ways. A lot of them are kind of like interchangeable with like each diagnosis, but for me, the one that I will tell people about that people will immediately recognize in me is hyperfocus, and locking in very, very, very hard to tasks that I do, and very much as a coping mechanism. So, none of you guys currently know what I'm up to, which I will be telling you very soon what I've been up to, but all of my close friends are currently witnessing my insane levels of hyperfocus that I'm currently going through. Also, that's a little thing to say. If you feel like I've been neglecting you, I promise I'm not. I am tunnel visualing this project that I'm on right now. But, the hyperfocus for me is like, it's all consuming, and it is a positive and a negative. So it can be awesome. It can be really great when it's directed towards something that will make me money, which I wish it always was. It's not. Sometimes it's really pointless things that I just really, really like and want to do, which doesn't make them pointless, but you get what I mean. And it can be very much, I've always noticed that I kind of use excellence as a coping mechanism because I have for my whole life, like Vixen said, felt quite different and sort of felt like I was on the back foot compared to my peers. I've always just pushed myself to incredible lengths as a way to like make myself feel like I'm worthy and make other people think that I'm worthy as well. And so, yeah, excellence as a coping mechanism, 100%. I also experience like extreme overstimulation, which is what Vixen was kind of talking about before with your mentee B. Overstimulation, just like insane, stressful episodes of like it's just like everything is too loud, everything is touching you too much, there is too much happening. It's like just this complete like freeze and meltdown and like chaos in the brain, and it is like it's very like unbearable to live with. But for me it comes in like varying degrees. I can become like completely overstimulated where it's like I'm in shutdown mode, or it can just be like a buzzing in the back of my head, which is obviously still incredibly frustrating, but I'm very sensitive to it. Also, my sense of justice, which I know, Vixen, for you is also intense. A like really strong sense of right and wrong here we are on our podcast where we're doing advocacy. Like, obviously that is very present in this. Sort of like a little bit of a love child of our ADHD and autism together, Vixen. And then I find that I'm very good at reading people. It's like the intuitive pattern recognition, just getting a vibe for people. It's like I don't necessarily, I haven't really like, what's the word? I haven't explored spirituality to the same extent that Vixen has. And Vixen is very, like, you're very spiritual in the sense of, like, you love your witchcraft kind of stuff and, like, you tie your intuition back to things like that. And, like, I haven't really explored that properly yet, but I know that I have this, like, insane intuition and the sense of, like, knowing with people. Like, there's a lot of times when people have done horrible things and I've sat there thinking, I knew this shit was going to happen, like, years ago. I clocked that these people were XYZ. This was the vibe I got from them. I just knew it. And then it comes to fruition and my brain is like, oh my God, like, whoa. Which is insane. I would also say, like, feeding into that as well, just like pretty, I wouldn't say blunt is the right word for me, but I'm quite bold in my honesty. It's not that I feel empowered to be blunt and honest with people in a confrontational way. It's that is my knee-jerk reaction, is to say what I think and be honest about what I think. And it's not something that I have to push myself to do. I actually have to be a bit more strategic with myself doing it, because obviously a lot of people, like we've spoken about in our confrontation and like conflict avoidance episodes, a lot of people are very like avoidant of that sort of thing, people who are really honest and very blunt. people really don't like that. And so I do have to be sort of mindful of it, but also like it weighs on me to an extent because other people can't handle it, which is, in my opinion, not fair. I think that blunt and honest is the way that we should all be to some extent. But yeah, like I'm very straight up. It's just how I have always been. Masking, I know that I mask a lot. I think masking is something that's being talked about a little bit more recently, or at least I've noticed it online a bit more. Masking is sort of a neurospicy thing where, I mean, it's exactly that. We have to put on like our neurotypical mask. So like, because I know that a lot of my behaviors aren't received well or understood by the general population of people, I have to put on this mask and present in this way that is like palatable and like understandable and acceptable to everyone else around me. And that's incredibly tiring. And for me, that has manifested in this like incredibly confident personality. Like I am a very boisterous, very confident, very loud, very humorous person. And so a lot of people find it really shocking when I tell them that I have autism, especially autism, because they're like, oh, wow, you're so like confident and loud and like, and I'm like, yeah, it's because I force it. I force myself to do that because otherwise you guys are going to think I'm fucking weird. Which is, that's like a psychological, like subconscious kind of thing that I do to make spaces safer for me to be in, just because of the way that we're conditioned, Oh yeah, like, I mean, I think like me and Vixen are of the age where like, I feel like we're so on this cusp of like, we grew up as children and teenagers where neurodiversity wasn't really spoken about very much. It was becoming like increasingly spoken about, but not a lot. I don't feel like it was until my 20s that I noticed. When did I turn 20? How old am I? I'm 27. So yeah, like 2018, sort of getting up into that area, that I actually noticed the conversation online and people talking about it more and people around me talking about it in person. So I feel like we were so conditioned to have like an understanding and an automatic stigma toward neurodiversity as kids and teenagers that now in our 20s, when we are now confronted with being that and learning about it, it's actually really difficult because we're having to like fully confront the like the stigmas that even we ourselves hold against ourselves and our own behavior. But yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but just sort of a thought. I also executive dysfunction paralysis, which is a wonderful 3-word name, I guess, for what normies would probably label is laziness or what's the word, Vixen, that I'm looking for?
Procrastinate?
Yes, procrastinating. Yes, perfect. Yeah, procrastinating, but really for someone with neurodivergence, especially ADHD, executive dysfunction paralysis is the knowledge that you need to do things and the complete paralysis of your brain and your neurotransmitters to get you to actually do the thing. For normal people with like neurotypical brains, there is a message that gets sent down your like through your body to say, when your brain says, oh, I have to go and clean the dishes, your brain sends those transmitters and you get up and go and clean the dishes. And someone with ADHD, that is either non-existent or is weakened. And so I know in my head, I'm very aware that I have a thing to do. And I will say, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to do it today. I'm so hard on myself. I'm going to fucking do it today because otherwise I won't do it. And my body just doesn't quite get over the hump and I just don't do it. And that turns into overwhelm because you leave things to the last minute until you very literally can't leave it anymore. And that is like, there's a big part of ADHD that's labeled as laziness and things like that. It's like, you just need to do it. You just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it. And that to me is what has been really frustrating and something that I had to really like reckon with, because I have always thought that I was a very lazy person, which to anyone who knows me knows is not true. But because of that, I had always labeled myself as a lazy person. But yeah, there's many other things, but I'll let you go, Vixen, if you've got anything to add.
Oh my gosh, I have so much to say. I should have been taking notes because I'm totally going to forget so many things. But thank you so much for sharing all that. I relate. I feel like we have very similar symptoms of how ours manifests in us. So as you were talking about the like executive dysfunction, I just remembered I have this quote on my phone. I wrote down that I listened to a podcast recently and they described my feelings pretty well. They said that people with ADHD have race car brains but bicycle brakes. When we get it going, our brains are the finest pieces of equipment you can have, but when you need to redirect focus and make a turn, we have cheap little bicycle brakes. This applies to attention, impulse, and emotional aspects of being ADHD. So for me, I love that quote so much because it's exactly how I feel. Like in so many ways, I feel like my ADHD is a strength, but because as I said, the world was built for like neurotypical brains, to excel, I feel like it can be a disability sometimes. So masking was one of the earliest things that I was learning about when I was on the internet, learning about ADHD in women, and one of the earliest things that I recalled noticing about myself. So growing up, I was often accused by other girls of being really fake. And at the time, I didn't understand why. But looking back on it now, I get it. So I'm a Leo sun, so I am quite a naturally vivacious, bubbly, outgoing person. But when I'm in social groups, I'm also a Gemini rising. And for those that are familiar with astrology, your rising sign is sort of how you act in social situations. Being a Gemini rising, I sort of like, I think of Gemini rising as like being like a clown and like just amping things up on like fucking steroids. So when I'm in group situations, and because I'm quite sensitive to the energies of people around me, if I'm surrounded by like a loud, bubbly group, I'm going to be even more loud and bubbly. And as a teenager, I think that read to a lot of people as disingenuous and fake. And so when I got diagnosed and having to, I think that was like sort of what I was touching on about being in the lockdown. When I wasn't having to be around people so much, I noticed myself unmasking. I noticed myself slowing down and how that actually felt so good for me. And I freaked out about the thought of having to go back and assimilate to life because I was really unmasking during that lockdown and getting comfortable with like having a resting bitch face and not always having to be so expressive and vivacious to feel like I really, like if I'm talking to someone, I want them to know I'm listening. So I'll nod and I'll like gasp and I am actually quite a naturally expressive person. I'm a theater person. I'm very dramatic, but I do notice myself in moments where I'm like, oh my God, I need to like bring this, like, I chill out. Like I don't need to be so big with it.
It's like performing.
I was literally just about to say, from my childhood, have felt like I am constantly performing, and like it's made me feel like, am I a fake person? Am I a fake? And that's something that I think a lot of women, especially with ADHD, struggle with, like doubting ourselves, feeling like, who even am I when I'm not fucking performing? I think it's why so many people with ADHD are attracted to like acting and performing, because we are very good at mimicking people. And that's what masking really is. You're looking at the people around you and sort of assimilating yourself to what they're doing because you just want to be seen as normal. You just want to be accepted. Humans are social creatures. We want to be understood. We want to feel safe in the acceptance of others, as I talked on in the conflict avoidance episode, that safety we're looking for. So that was my masking experience, and that was actually one of the earliest things for me that I noticed. And over the past 5 years of my demasking journey, I've noticed that one thing I've figured out is, as it also tied in with my unlearning my people pleasing, is that I'm a kind person, but I'm not a nice person. And by that I mean I don't go out of my way to maliciously harm people, but I feel like a lot of that fakeness I was accused of was me trying too hard to be seen as so nice and agreeable and accommodating, when a lot of the times I resented the people I was accommodating myself to because I actually didn't want to be doing those things. I was just people pleasing. And as I've demasked over the years, I can be a bit more sterner than I would have thought as a teenager I was. And I've always admired women that get accused of being bitches because they're usually just very blunt and stern and authoritative. And as I've gotten older, I've definitely started to notice I'm more comfortable in being more assertive and dominant and blunt, as opposed to like trying to be so fucking friendly and overly nice all the time, to a point that it does actually read as fake to a lot of people, because it kind of was, but it was just me masking. I was just learning to cope. For me, I also think a lot of this has to do with being tangata whenua, and also being raised by or having a narcissistic father and learning to walk on eggshells around him and navigate his moods. I am very sensitive to people's energies. I can sense, if I walk into a room, I can sense if someone's in a bad mood, if someone's in a good mood. I can even tell if someone's horny. Like, I can feel it. Well, Madeline touched on my spirituality and her intuitiveness, and I really want to emphasize that, like, especially for Māori, pre-colonization, being on the spectrum, and in many indigenous cultures and in many pre-patriarchal societies, being on the spectrum, you were seen as like, you were magic, you were intuitive, you're aware of energies. That's fucking magic. You're sensitive. That's a form of magic. But because we live under a patriarchy and a capitalist white supremacist society that teaches us to hustle, go, productivity, sensitivity and intuition is seen as a weakness. But for me, I think being able to enter a space and read the energy of the room, as much as it can be draining for me, and as I've gotten older, I've learned how to do rituals to cleanse that mana from me, I can read people. I'm going to edit myself in saying the correct word, but there's the te reo word for...
Takiwatanga.
Is that the one that's like, does things on their own time?
Yeah, in their own time and space.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that. I love it so much, and that is why I love looking at like a decolonized version of autism and ADHD, because I see it as a superpower and a strength if we didn't live in a world that was built by neurotypical brains for neurotypical brains to excel. But I think if we were able to live in a matriarchal, uncolonized world where we go things at our own pace and we aren't always striving for productivity, we would excel in ways that neurotypicals can't, because we would have the chance to slow down and listen to our intuition and read the energies and be able to process and sit with that. I think a lot of people on the spectrum have delayed processing. And so I think a lot of us can relate to moments where you're in a corridor with someone and you go home and you later realize the quote unquote social cue that maybe you were missing, or you think that you're okay with something, you sit on it for a few days, and you realize, wait a minute, like I'm actually angry and upset about this. And that's been something that has been a difficult thing to navigate in relationships, is people thinking that like I'm really dramatic because I'll go from being like cool with something, I'll sit on it for a few days, and then I come back and I'm like, actually, I'm fucking pissed about this. What else? Oh, yes. So hyperfixation is absolutely like, holy shit. The second thing I learned besides masking that I was like, oh fuck, this is absolutely me without a doubt. My whole life, I have had my little obsessions to the point that like people like will see those things and equate them with me. So like I can think back to what all of my obsessions were. Like as a little girl, I was like obsessed with fairies and wizards and fairy tales and like stuff like that. And then as a teenager, I was obsessed with like old Hollywood glamour, pinup models, Batman villains, horror movies. And now as an adult, it's like spirituality, astrology, tarot, and sex work. And it's, as Madeline touched on, the ADHD brain lacks dopamine. So we're driven by interest, not urgency. So if we are interested in something and it gives us dopamine boost, that's why so many of us are prone to, substance abuse issues, is our brain lacks dopamine. So we're looking for those quick fix and boosts of dopamine. For me, being in a hyperfixation like, oh my God, like hours could go by. I haven't pissed. I haven't eaten. I don't even care. I'm in the zone. I'm in this thing. I need to focus. And for me, a lot of my hyperfixations are research. I research thing. I'll be reading books and I'm like, shit, it's been like a whole day. I'm writing an article. I'm like, oh my God, like I need to piss. I didn't even realize it until like my bladder's about to explode. And the executive dysfunction, like I said, our brains are driven by interest, not urgency. So if it's a task that I have to do, like I used to really struggle in high school with doing my homework unless it was a paper I like enjoyed. I just couldn't, it like, it's something I just don't think we can ever get neurotypicals to understand, is that it's not us being lazy. It's not us being difficult. Our brains are not working with us. It's like it physically harms me. It feels like I am in a state of absolute paralysis. On days I don't take my meds, there can be times where like I just can't get out of bed. I'm so overwhelmed with thinking, okay, I've got to get up and do this. My brain starts spiraling. I'm not getting dopamine from it, and I end up just lying in bed, and then I feel worse about that, and it's just this horrible cycle. So yeah, like fuck. I think I really resonate with everything you said and how it manifests for you. And yeah, the justice sensitivity, as I said in another episode, because it's a spectrum, not every autistic person has the same sense of justice. Like Elon Musk is fucking autistic and his justice is that, I don't know, he thinks he should be the shit. My justice is very similar to Madeline's, and it drives my motives. It drives me. And like I said, in the strip club, I physically couldn't handle being exploited and abused by management. It wasn't something I'm going to be so honest, I almost envy people that were able to just, oh, it's all right, as long as I'm making money, like I can push past it. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. It made me physically ill because it didn't make logical sense to me how they were treating us. It just didn't make sense. It just doesn't align with my values and how I think the industry could more efficiently be run. So I envied the people that were able to just be like, yeah, it sucks, but whatever. Like, I'm here to make money. I'm not here to like change the world. Like, I do want to kind of change the world. I want to change things. I can't just see something going wrong and look past it. If it's wrong by my standard of wrong, I can't look away from it. And that can be a lot to navigate sometimes. And I feel things, like I said, I feel emotions I don't even think we have words for in English. I feel things so fucking deeply. And some days I just drown in them. I love feeling my emotions immensely, but sometimes there are days where I'm like, I wish I could just turn them off for like a couple of minutes and just like chill. But I don't have a base level of chill. And sorry, one more thing I've remembered, ADHD, oh my God. Madeline's probably the same. My brain is never not talking to me. I am constantly hearing voices in my head. I've never once known inner peace. I've never, except when I'm in a complete state of flow when I'm dancing. Otherwise, there is always noise in my head. So I really struggle with insomnia because when I put my head on my pillow at night, it's like a buzzing bees just bombarding my ears. I remember being a little girl and thinking, do other people constantly talk to themselves in their heads and have like 6 conversations? I've never known inner peace except for the rare times where I'm in flow state dancing. But yeah, okay, I'm going to shut up now. All right, Madeline.
How we think neurodiversity is a strength with sex work / why sex work is so accessible to neurodiverse brains. Shall I begin, I guess? So, I don't know, maybe I might have a little bit of a different idea of this than Vixen does. If I think about how my neurodiversity was a strength for me within my sex work, I'm thinking kind of like, because of my intuition, because of my ability to read people, I'm not trying to say that I was the world's best hustler, because the strippers who worked with me will know that is absolutely not true. I was very much a silly queen. But I was just able to tell if someone was freaky was weird and freaky, and I would be like, I'm just gonna dab out at this. I'm actually not that bothered about making that money. I'd actually rather not hang out with this really freaky person. Sometimes to a fault, sometimes to a point where I was like, oh, you probably should just get over it and try to make this money. Yeah, like sometimes it really served me, other times not so much. I would say it served me more than it didn't. But yeah, just my ability to read people, my boldness and my confidence that is, like I said earlier, obviously a big part of my masking. I'm very capable of slipping into this persona of like, yeah, here I am, butt naked, let's go. Like, I think, like, we talk a lot about the complexities of sex work and a lot about, the social stigmas and things, but like, something that we maybe don't talk about so much is just like one of the most simple aspects of sex work and one of the most overlooked aspects of sex work because, it's one of the main parts of the job, but like the bravery and the audacity that it takes to get on a stage butt naked in front of a whole lot of people is not something that we are just kind of taught in life. It's something that you learn in the strip club. You don't go into the strip club like with that skill already. You have to, it's like what is it called? It's like a birth of fire. Like you get on stage the first time you're butt naked. And so my ability to just be like, fuck yeah, okay, sure, is definitely tied to my neurodiversity. Maybe there's a little trickle or a sprinkle of impulsivity in there, which obviously isn't necessarily always a good thing. But just my boldness and my honesty and my just like, I've always been, to some extent, in some scenarios, I'm completely incapable of giving a fuck. And I find that sometimes I feel like that contradicts other behaviors of my neurodiversity, especially like in the way that I mask, because I feel at this point, honestly, like we've already spoken about masking a lot, but I do feel like my mask is sort of fused to my face at this point. Like it's very hard to take off sometimes, but when I'm in that zone where I have just relinquished any like falseness and I'm just myself, which I think this shows in my dancing as well, especially my more like erotic dancing, I'm just actually incapable of giving a shit. Like I actually just don't give a fuck. It's not even, giving a fuck isn't even really like an option in that space. It's not something that I have to talk to myself about to be like, babe, it's okay. It's just not there. Like I just literally don't care that I'm naked right now. And I actually don't really give a huge fuck if you reject me when I, ask for this booking or this tip or this thing. And so I think that served me quite well. This just like ability to just like tap into like complete comfort in the club. Was like not something that I was expecting myself to have when I went in there. I've been quite a body conscious person most of my life, but yeah, there was just this like sense of like, here I am, fucking take it or leave it. This like radical honesty, I think, radical acceptance that I reckon stems from the autism that I have. And then also I've written in this little list of things that I've written about myself is as a point, I've written freak mode on pole, which to me translates to like the hyperfixation that I that I experienced when I first started pole dancing, which for any of you who have only found me in the last like couple of years won't know. But like I went balls to the wall. I 10 toes in, like there was no stopping me. I progressed too fast, and I can say that now. At the time I was very proud of myself for my strength and flexibility, but looking back on that and now as a professional instructor, too quick, way too much. Hyperfocus had me on that pole every single day, which is not okay. And I I just absolutely like dedicated myself to being a great pole dancer. And this is not to say that being a great pole dancer, this is not to say that making yourself a great pole dancer equates to making lots of money and being an incredible stripper. It doesn't. Some places, maybe in the States where there are more dance clubs, it can, but that's not really the way it works here. But I will say, like, it gave me a lot more satisfaction in the job, knowing that I was having just the fucking time of my life on stage, and knowing that, you know, I did receive, and it might be convoluted, is that the right word, or like a little bit like conceited in a sense, but like I received so many compliments from customers and girls on my dancing, and it made me feel so, oh, I'm losing my voice. It made me feel so good about my stage and my training, and I knew that I had worked really, really hard for it, because I knew that I was spending every single day on the pole. And that just gave me a sense of joy in the work that I'm really glad that I have, and I think it was a big part of why I stuck around, you know, past what most people stick around, in terms of why sex work, and specifically the strip club, was so accessible to me and important to me, and what I needed from a job was, like, there's so many reasons. I've written quite a lot, but like I needed the flexibility of sex work. I have, like, and I learned this from my first full-time job in a beauty salon. That job, 9 to 5 every day, appointments back to back, sucked my will to live. It left me with nothing in the tank. I've never been so depressed and bored and just, like, coasting isn't the right word. I was just surviving. I was just kind of, it was so monotonous. I just hated it. And the ability to have flexibility with sex work is so important. Like Vixen said earlier, when you spoke about the days that you do and don't have your medication, and where your capacity sits, and the you know, spectrum of capacity that we experience with ADHD and autism and other things. I'm the same. I don't have a baseline. I don't have like a normal day. Every single day is so dependent on my capacity and my energy and the overwhelm that I'm experiencing, or the lack of overwhelm that I'm experiencing, and, you know, all of the different things that equate to make the experience of being ADHD and autistic. And so, you know, being able to work 2 or 3 nights a week, a lot of people, like, a lot of civilian people will listen to that and go, oh, what a dream. Oh, what a life. Like, that must have been so easy. It must be so nice. And you're right. Like, it is really nice. It is really great, but I needed it. Like, it wasn't kind of, oh my God, I'm just like frolicking through life the other like 5 days of the week, 4 days of the week where I'm not working. I'm just frolicking and just rolling around and having a beautiful time. At points, absolutely, but the rest of the time I was fucking recovering. Recovering from being hit by a train, which is what it feels like after working 3 night shifts in a row, especially if you're dabbling in any of that special stuff that sometimes you dabble in when you do that work. But also just due to being in my early 20s and not yet being fully aware of how I was different, and grappling with the way that the world is set up to accommodate neurotypical people, and unfortunately not being that, and having to figure out how to live a life as an adult, which is something that people don't talk about very often, is the way that when you leave school, be it high school or university or whatever it is, and you lose the structure of school, becoming a adult or living a life that no longer has that same structure to someone with ADHD or autism is huge. Like, I think you said this as well, Vixen, I need routine. I need it. I can't survive without it. I went on a holiday, a 2-week holiday, like 2 or 3 months ago, two months ago, I think. And the weeks the couple of weeks after I got back, I was a mess. Like, and that's the time when you're supposed to be like having a great time because you've just been on holiday and you're rested and you're like, yay, I'm so rested and I'm just like bathing in the bliss that was that holiday. Meanwhile, I'm like in the pits, like in the pits because I'm out of my routine and I'm trying to build my routine again, and nothing is working the way that I am used to it working because I'm just completely out of my routine. And so that same thing happens when you enter the workforce, and leave school and all of the support that school gives you. Um, yeah, like that's fucking so difficult as a person with neurodiversity. And so grappling with that whole thing, I was in survival mode, like full blown survival mode, just trying to make it through every single day. And so whilst, yes, I wasn't working that much, I was still like hugely battling. It wasn't just this like, la 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 la, 2 days of work this week, 3 days next week, two the other week other than that, it wasn't as simple as that. I also really needed the, what am I going to say here? When the first club that I was at, there was really no rules, which was a positive and a negative. There were definitely people who took advantage of that in a bad way. But for someone like me, I needed that freedom. I have such an aversion and I'm so repulsed by micromanagement. I'm so repulsed and I will completely shut down the moment that people try to, micromanage me in a way. If you can manage me, I'm manageable. But if it's micromanagement, it's not happening. And obviously that shit is rampant in most civilian workplaces. And the ability to go to work and just know that I just needed to get on stage when I needed to get on stage, and the rest of it was completely up to me, and I was very autonomous and able to decide when I spoke to someone, when I didn't speak to someone, if I wanted to work really hard that night or if I needed to take it easy. And me and the girls just used to do the craziest, silliest shit. We just were so silly and fun, and the managers thought it was funny and would join in with us, and that just made the experience. And I guess it had in a simplistic way, it was a loose workplace, which is always going to be more fun, right? But for someone like me, that just that was such a huge benefit that I didn't realize I needed as much until I went to the second club that I worked at, and that was completely lacking. There was no silly business to be had. If you were seen even maybe laughing a little bit too loud, you'd probably get a fine. So yeah, that was huge. It made the experience a lot more pleasant for me. And again, just that being my own boss thing, just being able to make the decisions. When I worked at a beauty therapy salon, I would be there 8 hours and I would see anywhere from 8 to 16 clients. And it wasn't oh, I need to take it easy today thing. It was a no, they are turning up at 10:30, 11, 11:30, 12. You must be ready to put it on for every single person and get it done in time and XYZ. And that sort of structure just it sucked my will to live. There was just no room for any difference in capacity at all. And obviously at the time I had this job, I didn't realize that I needed it, and I struggled so much. And looking back, I can see now why that was. And then lastly, at times, and this is in no way me glamorizing this job, but sometimes we do make a lot of money. It's very inconsistent, so I have to make that disclaimer. We're not making $5,000 a night. That's not the case. It's, 1 week you might make $5,000, next week you might make $300, and so on and so forth. And every number you can imagine that is on that scale, you will make at some point. And that just made it easier to work that 2 or 3 nights a week. You couldn't, if you were making not a lot at all, you couldn't actually justify the 2 to 3 nights a week working. But because we were able to sort of supplement with those bigger nights that we had, if you were lucky to have regulars or big spenders in, it wasn't stressful to take 2 or 3 days of work a week. If I did that now with my more regular income, I would fucking spiral. Financial anxiety is something that I do talk about with my therapist, because I'm very freaky about my finances. And if I knew that I was only working 2 or 3 days a week, I would just freak out. I just couldn't hack it. But because of the money, the no cap on the money, you didn't stress as much, and you knew that the money was coming to you mostly that night, which, yeah, was a sense of security that I desperately needed at the time. But yeah, how about you, Vixen? Do you have anything to add?
Oh, kia ora to everything you said. That was fucking beautiful. I agree with everything you said. And I really love what you said about the adjusting to life, adult life post uni or school. It's a really great segue into my korero about sex work and it complementing my ADHD. So when I graduated university, I got a full-time job working as an assistant store manager at a retail store. This was when I was still living in Ōtepoti. And a week into that job, I realized this is not feasible for me. I can't do this. Very similar to Madeline's story of like the 9 to 5 at a beauty salon, a beauty place. I remember the first week and my first day off, I got I think Sunday and Mondays off. I remember the first day off I got after my first week there, I spent the entire day in bed crying because I was like, I can't do this. And this was before I knew that I was ADHD. I wasn't even suspecting it at this point in my life. So the fuckama, I felt like a child. I felt so ashamed of myself and I was panicking and I was like, I remember thinking there's something wrong with me. People are going to think I'm being difficult, but I cannot explain enough how much, as Madeline said, I just felt deflated on my day off. I had no spoon. The days off I'd have, I wouldn't have the energy to take care of myself, to do my life chores, to have a social life, anything like that. The 2 days I had off, I was spent recovering from what I now know to be burnout from masking. Because retail is similar to beauty therapy where you are constantly serving people. You have to put on a persona to match the brand and you've got to constantly be serving people, and people in retail can be fucking like the customers can be fucking rude and mean and you just have to grin and bear it. And I'm also the assistant store manager training to be the full-time manager. So I'm having to be responsible for the other workers. And I just remember completely panicking. I got so depressed and I was like, I do not fucking know what to do. And then I got the idea, you know what? Maybe it's time that I become a stripper. And something else that Madeline said that I resonate with when you were talking about just not giving a fuck. So I think I have quite an inherently negative view towards neurotypicals and I'm trying to work on that. So apologies if you are neurotypical listening to this, but my overall view of a neurotypical brain or neurotypicals versus people on the spectrum is neurotypicals are sheep and people on the spectrum are goats. And by that I mean neurotypicals tend to have a very hive-like mentality where they're quite comfortable with just doing what they're told. You know, this is how life is. You do this, you tick these boxes, very traditional, very Saturnian, and they don't question it. They just, it's just how things are. Whereas for me, my whole life, I've always been quite a critical thinker. If something doesn't make logical sense to me, I question that. And that got me in a lot of trouble throughout my life, and in the club, especially in the strip club, when they tell me to, when they did start coming in and micromanaging and bringing in fines, and I'd be like, I don't understand. Can you explain to me why this makes sense? And don't give me that fucking attitude. But entering stripping, I didn't have to go through this journey of oh my gosh, I have to unlearn the shame of this is a bad thing. Oh, I'm being a sexually autonomous woman. This is bad. I knew since I was a teenager. Actually, I knew since I was 8 years old and I watched the Moulin Rouge that I was going to be a fucking stripper and sex worker one day. People always say no little girl dreams of being a sex worker. I did. I couldn't wait to be old enough to make men fucking financially compensate me for having to go exist with them. So entering the strip club, I wasn't nervous at all. I didn't have to I've heard stories of other strippers that, they said it was quite a shameful journey for them and they had to undo a lot of, and that was also dependent on their cultural and religious background too. But I didn't struggle with that. I was so excited to dance for the first time and get naked on stage. I couldn't fucking wait. And that I found to be such a strength because, like Madeline, I just didn't give a fuck. I actually wrote an article that I'm going to list in the show notes for Aotearoa Disabled magazine called The D-List. I wrote an article about how the strip club complemented my ADHD lifestyle, and I talked about how the dopamine reward of getting a booking, getting a tip, as Madeline said, getting paid out that night was like so fucking rewarding. I'd show up to work every night. I'd love the ritual of getting ready. I'd show up, put my persona on, ready to perform. I'm in the zone and very good at reading customers and being able to mask a persona that suits what they're looking for. It just was so rewarding for how my brain is built. And as I, spent more years in the club and got to know more dancers, I discovered that many of us were on the spectrum. Hells Bells, the icon, the legend, the gorgeous Hells Bells, we worked together at a club, and I remember her saying to me, being one of the first people in the change rooms, like, she was describing her ADHD, and I was like, oh my gosh, I like relate to that. And she was like, yeah, maybe you are ADHD. But yeah, the more I met other strippers, the more we sort of all realized, like, oh, like, we're all fucking, not all of us, but the majority of us are spicy brained. And that's the reason I put, like, why is it so accessible as one of the questions? Because I think so many sex workers I know, whether it's stripping or full service, we agree with what Madeline said. What we love the most about this job is that we can choose our own hours. We can work however many shifts a week and not have to work a 30-hour plus job, because the reality is, when you are on the spectrum, the majority of us, we're not built for a 9-to-5 workplace. And I've seen a lot of reels on Instagram recently of more people coming out and saying, like, I'm like a 28-year-old adult, or I'm like a 35-year-old adult, and I'm on the benefit because I can't fucking work a full-time job, and I'm finally overcoming the shame of that. And there will always be people in the comments being like, well, it's just the way things are. Like, you have to work. Like, gosh, you're such a moocher. Gosh, look at you, like, mooching off the hard workers. Just suck it up. I can't emphasize enough, we can't just suck it up. If we could, we would. Trust you. I think the majority of us, there is so much whakama and there's so much grief that comes with realizing that you cannot hold down a fucking full-time job, because you realize the world is not designed for you, and you feel so much grief for, like, how much easier would my life be if I could do that? But I think there's a lot to unpack there with those comments. I see a lot of comments of people being like, I struggle with this too. I just push through it. Either those people are potentially on the spectrum and don't know it, or they are on the spectrum and they know it and they're just better at pushing through it or whatever. It's a spectrum. Everyone has different needs. Everyone has different restrictions. But also, I think the underlying issue here is, like, when are we as a society going to just admit that working 30 hours a week is fucking insane? I also resonate with Madeline's feeling the need to, like, I guess the need for a better word, overcompensate by constantly striving for excellency. I have a Virgo moon, so I'm very stubborn in that. As I've gotten older, my disabilities are starting to get worse, so I am being forced to have to slow down, not measuring my worth on my productivity. And a lot of people out there are defensive of capitalism because their identity is measured by their job and their productivity. They value their worth on that. And through doing sex work and being able to pick and choose when I could work, and knowing that there were some days I might wake up and I've got a chronic flare-up, or I have executive dysfunction, I can text and say I'm not coming to work today, that helped me realize, like, it got me through the shame of it, because I just learned to navigate my life and curate a life that suited those needs. And a lot of people around me can relate to that. The majority of my friends have disabilities that impact their ability to hold down a 9-to-5 job. But even regardless of whether you're disabled or not, unless you're, like, ragingly able-bodied and neurotypical, 30-hour 9-to-5 jobs are fucking cooked. What the fuck do you mean? And why are you so fucking defensive of it? That's fucking, like, fucking teacher bit behavior. Like, oh my god, you're so lazy for not being able to hold down a job. Fucking, you're a fucking loser. Like, why is your whole life and your whole worth measured on your ability to work. That's fucking patriarchal and colonial as fuck. You're a fucking loser. I'm sorry, but I've just gotten to a point in my life where I'm actually kind of like proud of the fact that I can't work a 9 to 5 because like I'm not a fucking sheep. I don't do well being told what to do and when to do and having fucking deadlines. I go at my own pace. I am fucking nature. We are fucking nature. Not everyone is going to require the same fertilizer. Not everyone's going to require as much watering and sun as each other. We're all our own plants, and we have to figure out how to fertilize and water and nurture ourselves. And I'm not going to compare my fertilizer to your fertilizer because yours is different. But don't look down on me because I require slightly more fertilizer than you. Like, it's just fucking clown behavior to like be so judgmental towards people that have finally processed and come to terms with the fact that I cannot work 30 hours a week. It's not fucking feasible. And people get so much slack for that. I don't think you should feel fuckamara about that at all. If anything, like I said, you should be proud of it because it's a colonial construct to be working this much to earn a living. You're not a fucking sheep. You're not meant to assimilate to colonial patriarchal bullshit. You're a beautiful flower that needs to grow at your own pace, and you shouldn't be ashamed of that. And I think most sex workers have realized that. A lot of us love our work, and it's so fucking rewarding because a lot of us are on the spectrum, and a lot of us have figured out that this is like just the most feasible thing for us to survive. And if we are forced to have to earn a fucking living, this is the best way for so many of us to go about it. So while our lives might not be perfect, all of my friends that do sex work, we can say with full confidence that we fucking love our job, and it gives us so much autonomy and empowerment in a world that makes women on the spectrum especially feel fucking infantilized and fucking worthless. That's my tangent for the day, and I think that's probably a good point to wrap up for the day.
I feel like you and I could like talk about this for hours. Like there's so many things. Yeah, to finish out, if there is one thing that I want to say, it's I want to remind people that neurodiversity is a spectrum. Just because someone doesn't present in the way that you think that autism or ADHD should present doesn't mean that they don't have it. It's quite often, especially for people like me and Vixen, where we mask so heavily, it's an invisible disorder. People don't think that we have it or write us off or brush us off when we say that we have it. And that can be one of the most frustrating things to deal with as someone with neurodivergency. Just because you perceive me to be speaking really well and very confident and very all of this and that and all of that and capable and blah, 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 that is not an excuse for you to just like brush off or think that I'm bullshitting about my ADHD or autism. We need to do a little bit of a better job at understanding what neurodiversity is. And like everyone, like we always talk about the spectrum. We always say, I say that I'm specky, and like, that word comes into it a lot. And I think that sometimes we actually forget what spectrum means. And so a lot of people that don't present in the way that you think they should present are, brushed off or not cared for, or, are expected to, like the kind of mentality that Vixen was speaking about just now, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that bullshit is toxic as fuck. And I couldn't agree more with Vixen about the 40-hour work week. That shit is fucked. And I don't know why you'd want to. Like, no hate if you want to, but that is not something that features in my desires for my life. I've done it a lot and I fucking hated it. And honestly, even as neurotypicals, like, guys, if we could create a society where we could actually sustain life quite comfortably without having to work that much, don't you think it would be a nice idea? Can't we agree on one thing? Is that if we could all work less and be just as, provided for and safe and supported and, fed and housed and XYZ, that we would probably take that. Yeah. But that's my ending 2 cents. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, we're all learning as we go, and it's important to just remember that, yeah, it's a spectrum, which means that it's not black or white, it's not a line, it's a fucking squiggly rainbow, and it goes everywhere, and everyone shows up differently. And honestly, and the last thing I'll say is I honestly believe that neurotypicals are actually the minority, and that there's more neurodiverse people out there. Like, it's becoming more common, and I think that we're going to soon discover that neurotypicals are the minority and neurodiverse people. If the world was built for our brains, we would excel in ways that neurotypicals can't. Kia ora.
If you are in Aotearoa, or really anywhere, because I'm generous like that, keep your eyes on my Instagram, because I am going to be bringing some really cool shit to Aotearoa really soon, which has been something that I have wanted to do for a really long time, because we don't have a lot of stuff like this that is easily accessible to us in Aotearoa, because we are so isolated. But yeah, keep your eyes on the horizon, because I have some cool shit coming your way. I have been teasing it a lot on my Instagram, so if you're paying attention, you might be able to figure out a little clue or two. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
You have been listening to Stripped and Unscripted with Vixen Temple and Madeline Rose. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check the link in our show notes to donate to our Buy Us a Coffee. If you want to support the show for free, please follow us on our socials, leave us a review. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you in the next episode.